Today on Behind the Shot with Andrew Hoyle, I'm going to show you how I took this photo of the Hublot Big Bang Meca 10 P2P. This is a mechanical Swiss-made watch, and it is, of course, extremely luxurious, costing around £18,000. This is a big salute to Bitcoin. You can see there's a big cog in the middle with a Bitcoin logo. This watch can only be bought using Bitcoin. It's very special, and I'm very much looking forward to showing you inside the studio of how I took this shot. So here we are in studio, and we've got the watch already set up here. As you can see, what I've done is I've created a very sophisticated rig by literally pegging the top of the watch strap on this microphone stand and casually laying the bottom of the strap against the other. Now, I didn't want this watch just laying flat on a table. It didn't seem very interesting, so my hope was to have the watch basically hanging in the air and do something interesting on this background. However, my first big problem of the day is that none of my actual studio strobes decided to work. I don't know what's happened. I think the batteries are all dead. Hublot weren't really keen on leaving it with me for several days while my batteries recharge. So instead, I've had to go with continuous LED light. You can see already I've got these two panels set up. This one up here is acting as my key light, and this one is filling in some of the shadows around here. I don't love how it looks. It would certainly look a lot better if I was using my strobes with softboxes, but it's not too bad either. There's going to be a lot more work in post, largely because these two lights are actually very different colors. This one is quite a natural white light, but this one comes out a lot more purple. So I'm going to have to balance that out in Photoshop later, which we'll come to. But before we turn the lights off, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what it is that I'm going to be shooting. So we can see that we've got the watch hanging here, and I'm using the Canon 100mm macro lens, which really gets us up close on the watch face itself, which is great because this is a mechanical watch. It's got hand, it's got cogs, it's got all that cool detail which goes into the watch. You really get that 3D depth. So I want to make sure that that is the focus of this shot. But because there are so many cool little components inside here, it's important to make sure that every little bit is in focus. So I'm going to be using a technique called focus stacking, where you start by taking a shot where the focus is on the furthest part of the watch, and you take multiple shots, changing the focus point as it comes towards the camera. Then in post, you piece all those shots together, and the whole thing is nice and sharp. Now, the difficulty in doing that, though, is that you can't change your lighting throughout, because if you piece a shot together, the lighting is going to change, your image is going to look very, very weird. So I need to make sure that everything is set up exactly how I want the shot to look before I start taking those photos. So I'm going for this two light setup for this shot. I've got this one up here acting as our key light, and this one here just filling in the shadows on the bottom of the watch. Now, the key light is angled away to intentionally create some shadows on all of the little tiny cogs and other pieces inside the watch, because it's those shadows that create depth. It actually suggests that these little pieces are layered over the top of each other. And that is what looks really, really cool in the final shot. So I've zoomed in again now, and you can just see the importance of those shadows. It means that the actual back of the watch right inside is darker, and the light is just really nicely catching the arms of the watch and on the teeth of the cog, so you really get a sense of depth there. So I'm just starting taking a couple of test shots to see how the lights are balanced. And if we look at this first image, we can zoom in. This key light on the left is definitely a bit too hot. You can see it's sort of blowing out the highlights on the top left corner of the watch there. The problem is that the light on the left is a good color. So you can see on the top of the strap, that blue looks nice and natural, but it's turning to purple when the light from this light starts coming into play. So I'm gonna have to actually change that manually in post. So in doing my test shots, I didn't like how purple this light was, the fill light. It was giving a very odd color cast on the watch. And this isn't a perfect solution, but I'm adding this greeny blue gel to it, which is just helping bring that purple tone a little bit more under control. It's making it go too far the other way. It's now looking a little bit too blue, but I think that's going to give me at least a more balanced point to work from in Photoshop. Now, the other thing I'm doing is I'm going to add this layer of diffusion material, not to diffuse the light, but simply just to bring it, even at its lowest power, those shadows are a little bit too bright for me, so I want to bring it down a little bit. So I'm just going to add this layer of diffusion just to dim it a little. Okay, so we've got a gel and some diffusion material on the front of our shadows light, our fill light. Let's just take another test shot, see how that looks. Okay, I think we're getting to a good point now. The light's looking a lot better, the two lights are balanced, the color balance between the two isn't as bad anymore. The watch is clean and I like the composition. So I think we're ready to start shooting the focus stack. You can see the plane of focus move up and down this watch and the strap as we move it around, and it's those tiny adjustments that we need to do. So this could well be 20, 30, 40 different shots to get the whole watch fully in focus, which is why it's so important to make sure that the watch doesn't move and the lights don't change at all. Once we begin, that's the shot that we're getting. Now, crucially, what I forgot to say is that I'm using the timer on a 2-second delay. Normally I would use a remote release to do this, but I don't have one with me right now. And this is a good alternative. It means that you can press the shutter down, give the camera just enough time to stop wobbling, stop that motion from your hand, and then it takes the shot. So you still get the same result of using a remote release. You get nice pin-sharp images, but without using the cable. So I'll just move the focus further up that strap, focusing on the stitching. And after a point, you'll find that you have got everything in focus. Now, we should be able to just flick through the images we've got, and the watch should stay fully in place each time. It'll move in and out slightly because of the focus, that's how it works, but the watch, its position in the picture shouldn't move at all. And as you can see, the lighting doesn't change, the color temperatures don't change. Everything is exactly as we need it to be. So it's not been an ideal shoot. I don't like using LED light panels like this. I much prefer using all my studio strobes to get exactly the shot I want. But just looking at the back of the camera, I'm not too unhappy with what I've got, but I think it's going to still take a lot of work in Photoshop to really make this a cracker of an image. So let's head over there now and see what we can get. Okay, so now we've got the images here in Lightroom, and it's this set here which are the ones that we're mainly going to be focusing on. This is ones where I'd put that gel on the side to try and do a little bit of color correction. Now I brought these in and I've looked through, and I have done a little bit of color correction in Lightroom just to bring them back to what I want. As you can see, I've controlled how overly vibrant and strong that blue was coming from that gel I've used to control some of the tones, and I've just brought things just to a nicer point, and I've applied that across all of the images in this set that we're using. Now, as far as the focus stack goes, as you can see, the watch face here is very out of focus, but up here on the strap it isn't, and as we cycle our way through, you can see the focus shifts and different parts of the watch pop into sharp focus as we move around. Of course, what we need to do is actually piece these together. Now, I did try this already in Photoshop, and Photoshop's auto stacking tool didn't do a good job. It wasn't very neat, and it would have taken a lot of time to go in and manually change that focus. So instead, what I'm going to use is a piece of software called Helicon Focus, which a lot of still life photographers that I follow, they use this and think it does a much better job. First of all, I need to export these files. I'm just going to export them to pictures. I'm going to put them in focus stack. I'm not going to rename. I'm not going to do anything. File format though, I'm going to have them as, I'm just going to put them as DNGs because that's pretty much what I need. Blah, 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 blah. That is all fine. I'll go export. I'll just wait for that to happen. Okay, so now we're over in Helicon Focus, and down here we can see this button for Open Images as a new stack. So we'll click those and we'll go to Focus Stack, and here are our images. So I'm going to select all of those, hit enter, and in we come. I haven't used the software a lot. In fact, I haven't used it at all. So at the moment, I'm just going to leave everything as it is as standard, and we're just going to see what it comes out with by default. You can see as it's doing that, it's creating this map preview of what it's going to look like. And then it rebuilds that image back up. Just going to save this then on my desktop as watch. I'm saving it as a DNG. I'm going to hit save. Okay, so I've saved the image in Helicon Focus, and as you can see in here, it hasn't applied any of the edits that I did in Lightroom. You can see here it's that very, very vibrant blue, and there's this cyan tone here, there's a lot of purple in there, which is what I spent the time getting rid of here. But actually, what I found is that if I go and look, this is the DNG, and when I open that DNG back in Photoshop, because the DNG isn't saving any of the edit information, when you open it in Photoshop, not that one, this one, it's now read those edits from Lightroom and it's applied them. The great thing is that Helicon Focus has done a very, very good job of doing that focus stack. In fact, this is completely flawless. There aren't any of the blemishes that I found before. So for example, if we go into, just move this across so I can look at the original Photoshop version, you can see all around here there's this error, there's a big splotchy mess over here, this hasn't lined up properly. I'm going to move this, I can't really do anything with that, but in fact we'll have a better look. But again, on here, none of that is there. It's a very, very good piece of software for that sort of thing. So I'm just going to full screen this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click open image. A couple of things I'm going to do first. I do want to crop this, and I want to do a little rotation just to bring the composition in line with what I'm after, but I'm going to start by doing some cleanup. If we zoom right in, we can see that even though I cleaned the watch face, there are these dots of dust and grit and whatnot all over, and that is just going to spoil the polished look that we're going for. So mostly by pressing J and we go to the spot healing brush tool, I'm mostly going to get right in on these details, and I'm going to just select, oops, not that, I'm going to select a small brush size, and with that you can just dot over. Now this is very time consuming, of course. If you know a quicker way, then please let me know, but we'll speed up this process so you don't have to sit and watch it like I do. Okay, so I've done as much cleanup on the body of the watch. If we have a look before and after, you can see it was actually remarkably dusty considering I had cleaned this watch before I put it into position. It just goes to show that all those tiny specks that are in the air will appear in the product, and particularly because I wanted to get quite a contrasty light. I wanted the light at this angle to give the shadow and the depth on the watch face itself that has the side effect of really picking up any dust. Okay, so I've done some more cleanup on the whole watch, and if we zoom in a bit, we turn off that layer on and off, we can see how much dust there was and how much of a difference that has made. I also found there's a bit of a splotchy area down there, and I've given that a little bit of a clean up. It's not perfect, but I think it's pretty good, and I don't want to spend too much time doing the cleanup for this. If you were shooting this commercially for a client, if it was for Hublot themselves, then sure, you'd want to go in and make sure that this was absolutely spot on and every single tiny little pixel was absolutely perfect, but I don't really have the time or indeed the patience to do that at this point, so I'm happy to keep it just as it is. A couple more things I want to do, and I'm going to start by I'm going to copy this background. I'm going to camera raw filter, and I'm going to bring up the camera raw filter dialog box again, and we're going to just try bringing that saturation right down pretty much to nothing, and I bring those shadows. Actually, I'm not really going to do anything else at this point. I'm going to click OK, and you might think, well, no, that's just turn the whole image black and white, and you'd be absolutely right. But the reason is that what I want to do is I want to create a layer mask, an inverted layer mask, in fact. At the moment, that has just blacked out that layer, meaning that it's not visible at all. Because what I want to do is, as I said before, the color toning on the side, this blue shouldn't be there. That color tone has come entirely from the LED light panel that I was using on the right hand side just to fill in the shadows. So that's a shame that that looks like that. So what I'm going to do is by using this layer, we've desaturated it, and I can get the brush tool, select a larger brush size, maybe something around this size. It's going to be nice and soft. I'm going to turn my flow down, a nice low flow, something around 18%. And when I brush with white, you can see over here, by brushing with white, it basically brushes in that layer that we've created, but only where we're brushing. So it's not over the whole thing. As you can see, as I'm brushing on the crown here, on the side of the watch, it's bringing in that layer below, and that layer below was, of course, taking out a lot of that blue. So by brushing this in, we're correcting all that blue color cast that we've got on the side. It's very easy to do this with this one because all I really had to do is desaturate. There's no other color we're trying to protect. This was supposed to be a very steel gray. There's not really supposed to be any color there at all. So all I can do here is literally just paint out where I see that blue color tone, like this, right along this side. On this top, anywhere where that blue light has come in and given us an extra bit of blue toning. Now I don't want to do that to the strap because of course the strap was blue, so I'm going to be very careful in how far I take this. If I wanted to be really careful, I could create using the pen tool, I could create a path to follow to make sure that I don't go out and accidentally paint over into this blue like that. We don't want that. But I don't think I need to, because there is enough of a line there for me to follow that I can get, I think, nice and close up without cutting into the strap. Okay, let's zoom out, have a little look. We can turn that layer on and off. It has made a big difference to the overall look. I think the watch looks a lot more dramatic. It stands out. It makes the actual blue areas stand out as being even more blue because it's not just this blue light coming in from all sides. Now you've got this nice steely grey outer, so this inner line of blue here looks even more dramatic, I think. But I do want to do a little bit more just to bring this blue Bitcoin dial out. So I'm going to do, I'm really happy with how that looks. I'm going to merge that down into this layer. I'm going to copy that layer and then go back into camera raw filter. I'm going to zoom in on the B, and firstly what we're going to do is we're going to increase the saturation. We're going to try and make that blue pop out even more. I'm going to lift the whites and I'm going to lift the contrast. Already I think that's standing out quite a bit more. I'm going to add some dehaze a little bit, because again that helps with the contrast. If you go too high, then you can see things start getting weird, and if you go low it gets very grey. So I'm going to bring that just about +10, give or take. I'm going to leave the contrast where it is. In fact, I'm going to double click on that and bring it back to 0. Because if I start to add too much contrast, then it also starts to look a little bit noisy. But what I'm doing, this may look like I'm doing a lot to this image, and I'm going to make it look very, very weird overall and too contrasty and too bright around here. But I'm going to do the same as I did before. I'm going to say OK to that, and then I'm going to add a black layer mask, and I'm going to get back my brush tool. I'm going to paint with white, and I'm just going to paint back in that layer on top of just where I want it to be on this Bitcoin cog, as it were. Bringing back in those changes that we've just made on there, increasing the saturation of that blue, because that is a nice blue cog, but it hasn't come out quite as blue as I'd like in the image. So I'm not adding in color that isn't there. I'm literally bringing back what should have been there to begin with, but I'm not going over into anything else. And luckily there isn't any other color in this area around. The cogs around it are grey or black or silver, so I don't need to worry too much about going over on this layer. This looks good. I'm going to bring that in. I'm actually going to paint that same layer back into place on the arms of the watch, because they again were the same blue, and the angles of the lights, and I think using the LED light panels, we have lost a little of that vibrancy. So I brought those back in a little bit as well. I'm just going to make sure that every bit of this Bitcoin cog is covered. So if we zoom out just a little, and we turn that layer on and off, it's not a massive difference, but it really helps that Bitcoin cog really pop out. Okay, I'm going to merge that down. I'm going to duplicate that layer again. And I'm going to go back into Camera Raw Filter one more time. Now on this one, I want to add clarity to the whole image, which would be nice, but not too much. I want to add it largely just to the watch face, to certain parts of the watch face. I'm going to add about 30. Now that looks far too much, and again, if we press OK. So again, I'm going to apply this mask filled with black by option clicking on the new layer mask icon. And I'm going to paint with white only on the areas that I want that extra clarity to pop in. And that's mostly on these cogs. I really want them to be really nice and crisp and sharp, and I want them to really pop out of the watch face. And finally, a little more just on the crown. Just help that chisel out a little bit more, which I think looks nice. Okay, now if we look at the face and we turn that on and off, it's not a huge difference, but particularly if we look at these, at the teeth up here, turn that on and off, it just helps bring them out of the background a bit, and overall I think just makes it pop. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to go edit, fill, and I want to fill with 50% grey. I'm going down here, and I'm going to change that to overlay. That makes it disappear. And now if I paint on this overlay layer in black or white, that will let me dodge or burn the layer, or brighten or darken certain areas of a layer. Now there is of course the dodge and burn tool in Photoshop already, but it doesn't do a great job all the time of doing it. It sometimes burns the color a little bit too much. I think you get better control by using this gray overlay layer. So I'm going to go in. Now with the dodge and burn layer, what I want to do is I just want to enhance some of the shadows, and I want to bring out some of the highlights. So I'm going to start by painting with black, bring up B for my brush tool, and I want a low opacity for this, very low, somewhere around 8%, and I just want to start brushing in around here, some of this shadow. And that's very subtle. If you turn it on and off, you can see it's just a tiny amount. And I'll do the same on this arm here. I'll come around here, particularly on here. I want to just bring out and just try and sculpt. This is a little bit more. We're going to turn that on and off. It's just a very small amount. I might bring that opacity up just a touch, and just brush in where I want a little bit more of that shadow. Okay, and then to lighten layers, we basically do the opposite in painting with white. So pressing X to swap my colors, and I got white as my main brush. We can then brush on this white to brighten certain areas, which I want to do there. I want to bring it across here. And there's no right or wrong way to do this as such. A lot of it is very much artistic desire, down to your own preference. But a good rule is to follow where the highlights and shadows already are, and just enhance them in the areas that you want them enhanced. Not obviously just globally adjusting all of your contrast, but just giving them a little boost to help carve them out of the background a little bit in a way that I think should look really cool. Again, if you just turn it on and off, if you look at the crown here, that just makes that look a lot more 3D, a lot more chunky. I like that a lot. I think it's good. Okay, so zoom out just a bit, and we'll turn that dodge and burn layer on and off. Now again, it's not a massive change, but it really just helps make some of those details pop. Pay particular attention to these numbers around the side. You turn those on and off, they really stand out. And again, on this crown, I love the way that dodge and burn layer just helps sculpt that out a little bit more. It really emphasizes this highlight on the crown, which I think looks great. And again, I think on this rim on the inside of the watch where the numbers are, again, I just think it gives a much better impression that it's rounded and it curves. So here's the final image. Again, I'm really pleased with how this has come out, particularly because I wasn't very happy about shooting using not only LED light panels, but two different ones which had different color tones. So there has been a lot of work in getting rid of that blue cast and making sure that everything fits and everything looks like it really should do. I was very keen to avoid any extra colors coming in. And colouring the finishing result to an extent that it didn't look like the original watch anymore. So it has taken some work in painting out that blue and bringing up the right tones, but I'm really pleased with what the shot looks like. The watch looks amazing, those cogs really stand out, and although I'm not shooting this for the client itself, I think they'd be pretty happy with something like this. But do let us know your thoughts on the watch, of course, and the shoot, anything you would do differently, anything that you think I have done very, very wrong indeed. And of course, if there's anything that you would like to see me shoot, any products you'd like to suggest, do make sure to let me know in the comments below. And of course, do hit that like button and subscribe to CNET for more.